Rupert Neve's early career began by creating valve-based consoles in the early 1960s. Valve amplifiers were expensive, bulky, hot and inefficient, and by the mid-60s, alternative transistor-based technologies began to be preferred. The first commercially available transistors in the early 60s were made of germanium. They were much more affordable than valves and could be used to create compact and powerful amplifier circuits. Rupert harnessed the capabilities of germanium transistors, and after some experimentation, germanium transistors were installed into the early 1056 and 1058 preamp and EQ modules. The performance improvements led Rupert to abandon valve designs completely in 1964. Philips Recording Studio London commissioned Rupert to build a recording console which adopted the new transistor-based module designs. While smaller and more affordable than their valve predecessors, early germanium transistors suffered from inconsistent performance. A solution came in the form of commercially available silicon transistors and transformed the electronics industry entirely. The first to be used in audio, the BC107, released in 1966, had a more predictable performance than its germanium predecessors, had better noise figures and was cheaper to produce. Neve Electronics experimented with these new silicon transistors and were really pleased with the results. The BC107 transistor was first used in amplification designs from 1966 to 1968, namely the 45 series 1063 and 1066 modules. The success of the 1066 was immediately evident. It was Rupert's best preamp design so far, producing plenty of gain with reliable response. The 1066 modules were installed into the first BCM10 console in 1969. One of the first customers of this console was Pete Townsend of The Who. He purchased his in 1970 and he still uses it to this day. Rupert continued to experiment with audio transistors and found that the BC182 and the BC184 transistors had an even better performance than their predecessors. These transistors were used to create a new preamp EQ module, the 1073. The unique gain staging employed in the 1073 module uses two direct transistor-based gain stages at the input stage. Layered on top of each other, these amplifiers do the heavy lifting, bringing the level up to minus 15 dBu. The final transistor-coupled output amplifier then brings the signal level up to line level. This unique layout helped to produce the high gain level required for music recording. In the 1960s and 70s, Class A amplification design was still the best way to amplify an audio signal, with an amplifier handling 360 degrees of the waveform. By having multiple Class A gain stages working together, the 1073 was more efficient than its predecessors. Additionally, this design allowed the 1073 preamp to handle low and high sensitivity microphone sources while maintaining a low noise floor. Class A amplification allows a full swing through of the signal through both positive and negative. Class A, B and B use a separate amplifier device for the positive and for the negative. Class B generally suffers from an effect known as crossover distortion, in which the signal gets distorted at 0 volts. A common method to remove the crossover distortion in Class B amplifiers is to bias both the transistor at a point slightly above the cutoff point of the transfer. This circuit is known as a Class AB amplifier circuit. The issue of efficiency is much more of a concern with power amplifiers than with preamps. So to eliminate the small amount of crossover distortion that is still induced by the Class AB design, a well-implemented Class A design was preferred to minimise the harmonic distortion. Rupert designed and utilised custom-made transformers for several years. He created the LO166 gapped output transformer himself, while the creation of the 10468 microphone input transformer and the 31267 line input transformer had resulted from the collaboration between the Marinair Company and Neve Electronics in 1967 and 1968. Early Neve broadcast consoles had signal isolation at the forefront of their design. This philosophy was taken into the 1073 modules using input and output transformers to keep the signal source isolated from hum and interference. The transformers used in the 1073 modules were installed primarily for signal isolation and gain staging, but this design had an unexpected benefit. A subtle harmonic saturation was induced to the signal, producing pleasant sounding musical results. This sound coloration, of course, was never intended. Rupert's goal was to create the most transparent sounding high-performance audio equipment possible with the technology available at the time. However, the subtle imperfections created throughout the 1073 circuitry have become audio gold over the years. They have been a critical factor for creating some of the best recorded music spanning the past 5 decades. Rupert has since claimed to have technically improved on the 1073 many times with his later designs, but the minor flaws of the design became the main strength, even though they were completely unintentional.
Surely you'd have to get tired of competing against the 1073. It's a love-hate thing, isn't it?
It's my own worst enemy. Yes, we do. We get you know, people tell me how wonderful the old gear is and so on,
Yeah.
but it gets a bit boring after a while,
Yeah.
especially when you know that there's so much better stuff that we're working on now.
The 1073 module has a mid-band inductor-based EQ with an independent choke-coupled high-pass filter. This EQ circuit was designed for musicality, with gentle sound shaping across low shelving, mid-bell curve and high shelving bands. The fixed frequencies of each band were carefully selected for optimal use in a music recording console, since they had to perform across a wider frequency band of material than consoles used in the speech-focused broadcast industry. The inductor-based technology produced resistances at fixed frequency points across the spectrum that could be cut or boosted. This design, again, had unintentional benefits of imparting an analog hue when engaged. The Wessex A88 became widely renowned in professional audio circles for its sound quality, and the 1073 modules were primarily credited for this. The 1073 design continually evolved and improved over time. The 1088 module developed a 1073 design further, with the addition of a ribbon microphone input, and the 1084 featured frequency selection points for the high band and a mid-high Q setting. Early 1084 modules were fitted into the legendary Sound City 8028 console, now housed in Dave Grohl's studio. The iconic 8068 console used a 4-band evolution of the 1073, with a variation on the input arrangement, the 31102 module. Many of the consoles to use the 1073 modules or variations thereof have become legends in their own right, and many still exist today. I'm lucky enough to have a pair of 1073 modules in the studio. This is the CH variation, which uses the exact components, construction and wiring as the original design. With the following examples, I'll try to demonstrate the flavour of the EQ and the preamp. I'll also have a comparison with some plugins, see how they fare as an emulation of the EQ.
It's not you I'm running from, it's just the road I'm on. It's not you I'm running from, it's just the road I'm on. It's not you I'm running from, it's just the road I'm on. It's not you I'm running from, it's just the road I'm on. Well, it's apart from the night, but it's the same kind of light. Well, it's apart from the night, but it's the same kind of light. Well, it's apart from the night, but it's the same kind of light. Well, it's apart from the night, but it's the same kind of light.